All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Every industry conversation right now seems to start with AI, but for us, the real story begins earlier with connected data. Welcome to a strategic blueprint for AI and data readiness, transforming fragmented data into competitive advantage and enduring value. I'm Stephanie Hart-Harris, and I'll be guiding today's conversation. Over the next couple minutes, we'll explore how connected data creates a foundation for everything that follows, from automation and predictive insights to the kinds of tools that are reshaping the way projects are delivered and managed. You'll hear from Shelly Nooner, Andy Martin, and Karoliina Torttila, who will walk through the industry's current data challenges, what it takes to architect secure and interoperable systems, and the outcomes organizations are already achieving once the foundation is in place. Let's get started. Before we dive in, just a few notes to help you get the most out of today's session. You are muted, but you can submit questions in the Q&A below. This session will be recorded and you will receive a copy after. And we will see a few quick polls today, so we hope you'll join in and we'll share the anonymous results live. And one more thing, we will be offering 15-minute slots to speak with today's panel at the end of the session. There's just a few, so make sure to book them as they'll go quickly. Now let's meet today's panel. Joining us today is Shelly Nooner, our Chief Product Officer at Infotech. Shelly has been leading product innovation across our platform, helping agencies and AEC partners modernize the way that they manage data, collaboration, and digital delivery. Next, we have Andy Martin, who brings a deep perspective on data architecture, interoperability, and the technical foundations that make connected systems work at scale. And again, he's our Chief Technology Officer here at Infotech. And finally, we are so thrilled to have Karoliina Torttila, our Senior Director of AI, join us. She focuses on translating emerging technologies into practical, usable tools for infrastructure leaders. Together, they'll share the big picture to everyday reality, sharing how our data connection, interoperability, and smart digital delivery are helping organizations to reduce rework, improve transparency, and prepare for what's next. Now, when we look across the industry, we still see familiar challenge. There's valuable data that exists everywhere, but rarely in one place. Shelly, you've said before that the fragmentation doesn't really happen because people resist change. It happens more because tools and processes were never really designed to connect. So can you help us? How is your team approaching this challenge across our product suite to help customers move from a disconnected system to more unified, data-driven workflows?
Hey, thanks, Stephanie. So happy to be here today and start talking about the why we should engage with AI. I think when you look at honestly how data is fragmented, sitting in silos today, it's because people use multiple applications to do what they need to do, right? So I think this is the place where we really should look and take advantage of what this technology inflection point is with AI, because, I hear quite a bit, hey, artificial intelligence, is it a job replacement? And, my response to that is artificial intelligence isn't coming for our jobs. It's actually coming for our inefficiencies. And this is where one of the largest one lies, right? So I think you have change management on replacing and swapping out software, and what gets done from the office to the field. In doing that, AI is one layer we can put in to actually connect that intelligence today, where we don't have to necessarily do all of those swap outs, and go through a big change management exercise to actually get to the intelligence that feeds a better outcome, a better efficiency, a better building of our infrastructure. So obviously, this slide definitely represents the pain of the industry. It also, if you are willing to get in the conversation and engage AI, it also represents our opportunity. Everyone in this industry, kind of owes it to help course correct those inefficiencies to build better, sustainable infrastructure. I mean, that's the goal. The goal is also to actually understand what your data is that can be actually accessed for that intelligence. Really people have talked about going from, prescriptive to predictive, but this is the technology that can help enable that outcome and that decision making faster. It can give you that background. I think it's an exciting time. I kind of want to be in that game and in that conversation. I think you can either lead the charge knowing the industry, or you can be a follower to adopt what somebody else built, right? So I think it's really, really important that everybody, step in and start to engage that conversation, understand where it could help, understand what data they're sitting on, what outcomes they can't get to today, because, you know, AI coming on the scene, the inflection point of actually technology coming on the scene to mass adoption is shortened dramatically over time, right? So this is something that you don't want to be behind in understanding what the capability that you can achieve would be.
No, that's totally fair. And it seems like data readiness is a massive part of that
Absolutely.
compensation.
Absolutely. I think it is, I think one of the things is you have to understand, what is your data structure? Well, I mean, you have to understand what you're trying to solve, first of all, right? And then you've got to figure out what data you need to be accessible to go help solve that, right? In some ways, our workflows that are out in the field are, creating and generating massive amounts of data, and that data parsed with other things is going to unlock some massive intelligence on how we go and plan for the next build of the next asset. I think you have to really obviously digitizing from, paper to a data-driven solution. That's probably a prerequisite, I would imagine. Would imagine that you definitely have to look at digitizing your processes, right? Which can be kind of scary because people get used to doing something a certain way. But think about what you can get to if you take that first step and replacing your paper to a software solution, a digitized solution, and then even how more you go and put that at a connected platform view where centralized data is actually looking through all the workflow experience and not just landing on one thing, right? There is application level or workflow level enhancement to be gained by AI. There's whole build, from plan to build to estimate to be gained by looking at it from a platform view as well, right? And I mean, the
Yeah,
ultimate goal is really coming to more intelligent decision making. I think it's pretty exciting when you can, solve some of those big questions that you were parsing through a bunch of different places, whether it be spreadsheets, whether it be your software, whether it be you asking a vendor to create that button for you, right? So how do I go do this? So I think there is this next level of intelligence that we can drill into our processes going forward. I think it's a pretty exciting time, actually, if you're willing to step in and think about the possible.
yeah,
I think it's also kind of how, all people who've been in this industry for a long time, like myself, and I fully date myself here, but I've been in here for a while, and it really is a way to move from legacy to leadership and the next things we do.
yeah. Now, you've said that Infotech's origin is as a data company. How do we use that to think about what's next? So how does that build on the foundation? How can we build on that foundation rather with AI and towards more future ready tools?
So I think one of the things that kind of I feel is synonymous with infotech is trust in an application, right? Really
Mhm.
build up trust, transparent, secure applications. And when I think about being a data company, going from solutions to looking at data, it really is putting our customer lens and our industry lens on it and saying, what is the next level of value that we can create for the customers we serve? How can we lead them to, faster, better, accurate accessible information and decisions. So it's helping guide them inside the tools they've always used, right? So you want to put that intelligence inside, and show them how they can use that historical data and the data they're generating today in the solutions, to better make decisions in whatever part of the application, the process, and the industry they're in, right? So I think, it's again, kind of exciting because understanding what our solutions serve at a workflow and application level, now it's about helping our customers answer the bigger questions and things they need to solve because we're able to help them actually, put that data together and provide intelligence back.
Yeah, that's incredible. Now we have a quick pulse from everyone joining. Let me go ahead. I've just launched a quick poll for everyone. How would you describe your organization's current data environment? There's a range here from mostly manual to more AI ready. And again, the responses here are anonymous. I'll give you all another 10 or so seconds and then we'll share. So it looks like most people fall within a digitized to connected ecosystem. Shelly, does that line up with what you're hearing from people across the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I actually, that's a great place to be, right? Because it speaks to the fact that AI layers in very well into disconnected data to bring intelligence to multiple solutions, right? So I think this is even getting past the paper to digitization, like that is a huge leap, in some areas of construction. I think even the better leap is, hey, what is the connected platform view? So how much more can I do for my workflow? And if I do go and adopt along a platform view, how much more intelligence do I get into my decision making along the way? Because I am in that, right? I am using that. I am generating my data that way. I am in a platform play. So, I mean, I think that's actually a really good place to be. I would think if you look, where we serve state to local markets, it used to be that the spreadsheet was necessarily the competition, but I now think, you know, the competition to get to the better build, the better, more sustainable infrastructure is like how do we connect the data that's the under the hood to serve the intelligence, right? Which is super key. So I like it that most people said that. I
Yeah,
was actually I was that's actually really good.
it's
Um,
solid jumping off place for everybody, right?
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
starting point for sure. Big one. Oh, yeah.
How do you balance the push for innovation with the security and compliance and scalability for products as we evolve?
Great question. So, I think one of the things is in this environment, a lot of people have secure, connected environments. They have cloud infrastructure that has great tools, great trust, great transparency. I think, the biggest thing you hear is a lot of people will say, the my data, right? And I think it's such an interesting conversation because, listen, we create solutions to help customers generate, create, and aggregate that data, the data they have for information, whether it is, existing condition, whether it is now we're planning for the asset build, is it we're now taking in information from the contractors on how to bid through that process, how to build and manage that contract through that process. So I think, you know, cloud infrastructure, I'm sold. You kind of need to wrap your head around embracing that, because there's a little bit more protocol to that around secure environments. And so I think, obviously, we have a lot of regulation and things like that, across in the industry and federal highway support to, make sure that what we are building and what we're putting and what people are using is secure.
Yeah,
I think
that's a
legislative.
perfect transition to our next poll, which is what is the biggest barrier. Oops. There you go, y'all. Go ahead and start voting. What's your biggest barrier that your organization faces in your connected data systems? Is it more budgetary, governance issues, security or compliance? Looks like it's probably more people than technology. All right, okay, 5 seconds.
I tried to vote, by the way. Will not let me vote.
So it's mostly people, not so much technology, right? Lack of budget or resources or ownership and governance related. Um, which feels like a really delightful place to kind of kick over to Andy, and talking about governance of our systems. Um, As our CTO, you see firsthand how technical architecture and data design decisions influence everything downstream. Um, for teams who still are a little bit more siloed, what does it actually take to start connecting data in a way that's both scalable and secure?
It's funny. I think Shelly covered quite a bit of this, and I would reiterate that I think that if you are somebody who's just starting out, or you do still have a lot of things that are manual or isolated systems, in some ways you're in luck, right? Because there are a lot of good options to help you get started, and you don't have all of the kind of existing baggage of how you might have had fits and starts in the past. These days, like Shelly was saying with the cloud systems, there are so many good options that exist now that didn't exist in the past to help you avoid the custom complex internal in-house software that you might have used to manage these flows and whatnot. So you can rely on some third parties who have really built some really great things instead. For instance, if you are just starting out, a great option for a lot of organizations is to adopt like an integration platform. So these are tools that can take the data out of most of the common systems that you might be using, things like Salesforce or Google or Excel, GIS, and they can turn that data into data appropriate for your other systems, right? So it's just the mover of your data helping you get things flowing. Or it can do other things like generate reports or uh, emails or notifications, other things like that. So, these integration platforms are things like, maybe you've heard of things like FME or newer offerings like Google just announced a thing called Agent Space. These are tools that are really designed exactly for this type of data connection need. And data being kind of the foundation of that intelligence that we talk about, it's very important that you get it where you need it, when you need it there. So if you are instead an organization that's ready to go maybe AI first, or really just looking to get more into AI or enabling intelligence in different facets of your business, I think that truly this is the right answer to start with, is looking to some of these third parties that provide scalable and secure tools that can work with data in nearly any shape or form at this point. Yes, there is an advantage to shaping the data yourself, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but these are designed even in those worst case scenarios to help you out. So spend the time to research and maybe invest in a tool as your first step. You might outgrow those tools. You probably will outgrow those tools over time as they become maybe more cost inefficient because you're growing and you're needing more data in more places. But they're a great way to get a handle on this first and really understand kind of where you are. So I would definitely recommend that as a first approach for all of those reasons, right? It takes care of that plumbing, it takes care of the scalability, the security aspects, and it really starts to layer AI capabilities on your data right away instead of having to figure out how you're going to make this happen in-house, because that kind of comes right back to the people point of, do we have the people? Do we have the skills that we need to do this in-house? Well, maybe it's a good time to rely on others for that. But ultimately, I think the most important thing, and Shelly touched on this, and I think it's a really important point, is you got to know what data you want to flow where and when. once you know that, then the tools are there to help you do that. So I think it's just making sure you do it in that order and not the reverse order of adopting a tool and then trying to figure it out. And then the amount of efficiency that you'll gain, you and your teams are going to gain from taking control over that data. It's going to feel like a whole new level of efficiency, maybe even a level of magic at some point. So, I think we can move on to the next thought. Yeah.
That's incredible. All right. Now, if we connect partners along that, how do you continue to maintain that control and governance?
Yeah, so this is kind of it definitely continues on that same thought, right? So we hear a lot about APIs, right? These are the interfaces between systems, right? They're the how are we going to get at data? How are we going to get at the different tasks that a system or an application decides to expose to the world? And we sometimes in the industry get caught in this place where we just talk about APIs like everyone understands what those are and how they work and what they provide. So I thought I would try and create a tortured analogy around this for a second or for our webinar. It's like I think of APIs as kind of like when you're going through the drive-through of a restaurant. So the restaurant provides a way for you to ask for an order and a way to exchange your money for the food and a way to get out, but it doesn't give you access to the kitchen or even the building in general. It gives you a well-defined window, literally in that case, where you'd make this exchange. And like I said, tortured analogy aside, APIs are actually very similar in that way. Like they give you a interface in which you understand how to say, I would like this, and it gives it back to you in a well-defined, secure way. Where you can, request maybe not food, but your data, right? And once you have that, then you can just then put it back into another system. And I think it works as an analogy and as a real API kind of world, because we know, thanks to things like data standards and schema standards and things like that, how to communicate between these two groups and, in real life using common language. And furthermore, we know how to access the data because the supplier of the data adheres to the standards in the same way we do. And this is a known thing, or it's becoming more and more table stakes that this is provided as a real thing. And Appia, BitExpress, DocExpress, our own products are no exception to this. Each of our products have published APIs with their schemas published with them, so that every user that uses them can be confident the data is going to be in the shape they expect, in the format they expect, and in a way that they know how to use it. And certainly this is true of those tools that I was mentioning earlier too. Meanwhile, not only that, but the owners of that data, or like if you're in control of one of the systems but not the other, you have total control over the data that you choose to share, and when you share it and with whom, which I think is a really important part of the security aspect. And I think there was probably something about a tasty burger and all of this, but I've definitely tortured that analogy enough. Anyways, but building and maintaining assets, right? So that's ultimately what this industry is all about. Involves so many different groups, so many different vendors, so many different companies, so many different agencies. But it should be an expectation in 2025 and beyond that your data can flow through them all, from the beginning to the very end of that life cycle and back around again. So for as much as I've already talked about, as an organization, you should be able to do this. Organizations like Infotech should be doing this on your behalf as well, making sure that these different applications and services are talking to one another and making sure that your data is where it needs to be in that life cycle when you need it there.
Thank you. Yeah, that trust and reliability and compliance is key in almost every conversation, and really outside of technology. I have one more poll that I will go ahead and launch for everyone. Which of these following best describe your organization's approach to data and AI strategy? Whether you're still exploring or really not pursuing it at all. And we'll give everyone about another 30 seconds or so and then share And it looks like most people are somewhere in that beginning phase of consideration and exploration, which is great. All right. Okay. There we go. So that brings us to the next stage of the conversation about what happens when these barriers come down. So, Karoliina, this is where your work really begins. Once our systems are connected and data structured, what kinds of insights and efficiencies start to appear?
Perfect. Yeah, and this is great to build on. I'm not gonna continue to torture the drive-through analogy, but I feel like there's something there we should discuss going forward, Andy. But yeah, I think at the core of the AI opportunity is really data in context, right? Data in isolation, data on its own tells you what happened, but the context part of that is what tells you, why it happened and who was involved and what will it impact next. And that's really the shift that we are looking to engineer here, right, in the connected systems, not just connecting APIs and kind of repositories of sorts, right, but linking entities, linking locations, time, lineage, and relationships. So both our current non-AI systems and future AI systems can reason and not just retrieve information. And yeah, that context can really be many things, right? It can be location. If a project scope overlaps a school zone, you're going to have to deal with daytime lane restrictions and so forth. Or it can be history, right? That change order that just landed today in isolation may seem routine, but if you look into it and we recognize that 2 items on it have driven overruns on similar projects over the last quarter, we might want to flag this as something to look into further. So that's ultimately what we mean when we talk about data in context.
That's awesome. And it sounds like starting small and somewhere specific, somewhere familiar is really a great starting place. So not really reinventing all of the wheels at the same time. Where is there a particular place that you see organizations usually starting, or somewhere that you might like to see organizations starting?
Exactly. Yeah, great question. I always recommend starting where you have a combination of both high pain and high data density. If you start any project with 0 data, the sourcing will always take longer than you expect, and that's kind of the best way to kill momentum. So really high pain, high data density. Given Infotech's footprint in bidding, we see, of course, a lot of opportunity in enriching this existing bidding data to do things like improve discoverability and analysis. Many times the information is there, but it's maybe just not surfaced and served in the ideal optimized manner. Document handling, field data, they're all really rich in opportunities, but it really needs to be grounded in the domain.
Makes a lot of sense. So we've talked a little bit about architecture, systems, standards, and governance that make our data interoperable. What do you think feels truly achievable for our industry in the next few years?
Yeah, I think, this first wave of AI is really mostly about utility, like these tireless assistants that clean up the busy work and they read your plan PDFs and normalizes your item codes and, shows what you care about and identifies and flags the most critical change orders. But then from there, we move more into this assistive help, pre-filling of forms, drafting notes, suggesting things, where it makes sense. And then onwards to these more agentic workflows, so a little bit more autonomy, so well scoped, but still trying to tackle fuller tasks than just a kind of simple data transformation. So yeah, I think that's going to really be the spectrum that we operate in, and it's really all builds on top of each other. So yeah.
Fantastic. I was going to ask you about blueprints for where you think people should start, but I think you kind of gave a sense of what that roadmap might look like. Is there anything else that you would want people to really think about there?
Yeah, I think Shelly said it actually well. Start from what are you trying to solve? What's that pain that you're trying to address? Map the data behind that decision. It doesn't need to touch your entire ecosystem, right? Maybe touches 1 or 2 or 3 systems, right? But really identify that data, that schema that you care about, and then have a point of view of, how will I solve it? Like, what is the data what is the information that I need to make this decision? So, yeah, don't start from a system overhaul would be my recommendation.
Makes sense. All right. Well, I really appreciate it. Now, I did mention at the very beginning that we were going to offer some 15-minute slots on November 25th. I will share out that link shortly in an email follow-up to everybody here. There's just a few, so definitely recommend booking those as soon as possible. It'll be an informal conversation where you could ask questions to our group here. But I want to thank everybody for joining us, and thank you for joining and sharing insight today. I think it sounds like the big takeaway is that AI readiness is really not so much about chasing any sort of trend, so much as it's about focusing on building systems that connect and scale and solve like a key pain point specific to us. But we look forward to continuing the conversation, and everyone have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.